Hello, and welcome to our first episode of If Not Now, When. On this first episode, we will be traveling from Alpharetta, Georgia to Fort Myers, Florida. We intend to stay there for 3 months, January, February, and March of 2021. On the first leg of our trip, we will be traveling from Alpharetta, Georgia to Wellborn, Florida, and we will be spending the night at a BoondockersWelcome site near Wellborn, Florida. Google Maps shows that the distance for today's travel will be 308 miles and an estimated drive time of 4 hours 27 minutes. However, we don't travel at the speed limit of the interstate system. We travel at 60 miles per hour. So our travel time will probably be closer to 6 hours than 4.5 hours. We also like to make frequent stops as we find this makes the trip more enjoyable for us. And since we're retired, we don't really have a pressing need to be anywhere at any certain time. We had only traveled about 25 miles from home when, on arriving in downtown Atlanta on the connector system which connects the Interstate 85 with Interstate 75, we got involved in a complete backup of the interstate system. This backup cost us 3 hours as we sat and moved exactly 2.5 miles. We couldn't believe it. As long as we had lived in Atlanta, we had never been involved in a backup so severe. While it was an inconvenience to us, it represented a horrible day for a family whose husband, a police officer, was killed on the job on the interstate. This meant our trip now was going to stretch over 9 hours instead of just simply 6 hours. This meant we would now arrive after dark, and the front that we were trying to beat, which had a lot of rain embedded in it, would now engulf us rather than us arriving prior to the front arrival. So we would be driving in heavy rain for over 4 hours. I was not looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I had a relief driver with me, my sweet wife Pat. Here are a few scenes from our stoppage in downtown Atlanta. As you can see, there was traffic everywhere. At this point in time, we did not yet have a video camera, so most of the pictures you see, or rather all of the pictures you see, are still shots that we took as we inched along the 2.5 miles. A car caught fire off to the right of us as we were sitting there, and that was a major concern to me because if it caught fire and it got big enough and it spread to other vehicles, I wasn't sure how we were going to be able to exit the vehicle and get out of the zone that would be on fire. So we spent some time trying to figure out where we might go, but fortunately that was soon put out. When we finally got out of the traffic jam, the cars were like exiting like they were at a racetrack. It just was pandemonium everywhere. Soon enough, the rain caught up with us as Pat was driving. It was tough driving. When we finally arrived at our destination in Wellborn, Florida at the BoondockersWelcome site, it was raining hard. There was no light available in the yard or at the approach, so it was difficult to see where actually to turn in at. So we had to set up in the dark, and not long after setting up, we just went to bed. I think Pat may have fixed us a sandwich or something, but other than that, we just called it a day. The next day I walked around the site, and the weather was great now with the front having passed through. It was cool and clear. But I walked around the site and took a few pictures to document our stay there. It was a real nice place. I would recommend it to anybody that is looking for a BoondockersWelcome site. By the way, you can find places like this by joining the BoondockersWelcome group. The site for BoondockersWelcome is BoondockersWelcome, that's one long word, BoondockersWelcome.com. For the next leg of our trip, we would be driving from Wellborn, Florida to Dover, Florida. We start the second day of our travel after a nice stay in Wellborn. This travel section would also be along Interstate I-75, so it was an easy pull for us. No real wind to speak of, and no weather other than bright blue skies, so it was a nice pull. This leg of our trip would only be about 2 hours and 42 minutes as projected by Google for 186 miles, but since we travel slower than the speed limit of 70, we travel at 60 miles per hour. It would probably take us more in the line of 3.5 hours to get there. Not a long pull, and certainly easy on the interstate. This site in Dover would also be a Boondockers welcome site. So when we arrived at the site, we were greeted by our nice host who had set up small flags in his yard to help guide us in, and he and my wife both then guided me onto the site as I backed up with our 38-foot travel trailer. His help was much appreciated. The site itself is level. It had water, electric, and actually even a sewage connection for a septic tank there. So we had full facilities, but since we'd only been on the road, this would be our second day, we didn't bother to hook up to the sewage. Across from us were several fields of strawberries, as this is a very popular place where strawberries are grown in Florida. This and Plant City are well known for it. I've got a few videos here of the Boondockers Welcome site so that you can get a better look at how nice it was. We really appreciated staying there. And interestingly, it turns out that this gentleman and I both worked at the same corporate headquarters in Tampa for a while. Although we didn't know each other, we had mutual friends there. The next day we departed Dover and drove to North Fort Myers, Florida, which would be our destination for the next 2 weeks at Pioneer Village RV Resort. While our overall length of stay in Fort Myers would be 3 months, we were going to have to move several times to different locations, as we're part of a Thousand Trails membership, and that membership that we purchased gives us 2 weeks at one of their facilities, and then we have to leave their system for a week, and then we can return for 2 weeks, and then we have to leave for a week. So it goes like that. It's a little inconvenient, but the price is excellent. The only bad news is this is the first time we've ever been able to get into the Fort Myers area, because in years past there are so many Canadians that come down and spend the winter that we haven't been able to get in. But with this year's COVID preventing the Canadians from being able to come down, it meant that we had some availability for a change, so that was certainly welcome. Google Maps shows that our trip will be about 125 miles, and they estimate 2 hours. I'll give another 45 minutes or so for that, so it probably will take us around close to 3 hours to get there. But again, it'll be an easy drive, interstate all the way, and weather's good, so nothing to worry about. On this leg, we stopped for lunch at one of the Florida State rest areas, and Pat had prepared nice sandwiches for us, so we sat out and enjoyed that. And we parked among the truckers. On leaving, we immediately got into traffic situations on the interstate, but that didn't take long. Here's a picture of us crossing the Alpharetta River in Riverview, Florida. And then as we get so close to Sarasota, we again backed up with traffic. Here's our arrival at Pioneer Village in North Fort Myers, Florida. Like a lot of the private campgrounds, there are people that live in the campground year-round, so it's a mix between some people that are traveling like us and other people that are living there year-round. A few shots of the activities that we observed while we were setting up and driving into the campground. Be sure and stay tuned for episode 2, where we show more of our stay in Fort Myers, Florida during January, February, and March 2021.